So, welcome, viewers, panelists, my co host, David Peterson. This is the fifth chat which we're having in our series on nonviolent governance, the case of Armenia, the nonviolent revolution in Armenia. And today we are speaking on women's who are nonviolent leaders who are going to tell us about their work. So I'm Jill Carr-Harris, and I'm from the Jai Jagat movement, currently stationed in Armenia. We were stopped here because of the coronavirus. We were in the process of conducting a long march from New Delhi to Geneva, and we got through 5.5 months, and then we're stopped in Yerevan. What is the Jai Jagat? It's a campaign on Gandhian, inspired by Gandhian values, but on peace and justice issues. Now, today is Kasturba Gandhi's birthday, and I would be remiss if I didn't say one or two things about Kasturba Gandhi. She was the wife of the very well-known Mahatma Gandhi, and she was a force of her own, apart from her duties with Mahatma Gandhi. She was a mother, and she was also a freedom fighter. She played a key role in the Indian freedom movement, and what is really remarkable about her is her quiet force. She suffered immeasurably in her life, her public life, but she was ironclad in her values for nonviolence, truth, and peace. And in her memory, we thought it would be most appropriate to bring together two panelists who themselves are very, very strong women leaders. Our panelist today is first Sonia Diotto. I always say Diota. She reminds me it's Diotto. Sonia is from Italy originally, and she spent many years in India working on a number of issues related to Gandhi. Most notably on intercommunal harmony. She has more recently been spending time in Mexico, building up a Gandhian movement. And she's worked on all aspects of Gandhi in terms of not only intercommunal harmony, constructive programs, working with indigenous people, working with women at the grassroots. And she is really in the memory of Kasturba. Our second guest is Goarek Tigranyan. And Goarek is another amazing woman, somewhat younger, but she is studied in human rights and has been working on non-formal education with excluded communities and marginalized communities in Armenia. She has a great interest in civic education, and what is so interesting and why we're so happy to have you as a panelist, Goarek, is because of Armenia in its new phase of democratization after the revolution, and how you're playing a significant role in working to help people better understand democratic rights. So we're very delighted to also have Goarek as a panelist. So in having these two amazing women, we're just going to suggest as an agenda for today's dialogue, whether you could begin in your opening statements to talk a little bit about yourselves, and then to move on in the first round to really cite what are some of the problems and challenges that you're facing, not only in this time of coronavirus, but otherwise, and perhaps we could look at problems and challenges in this first round and later come to solutions and opportunities. But before we ask Gauarik to begin, may I request David to also welcome everybody to this talk. David?
Hello, dear friends. It's it's honor for me to be in a conversation along with such beautiful and also very experienced and women leaders. I hope I will be able to moderate this talk, give good questions, and also try to keep our connection with our technical technical part, Arabek, who is helping us, and also people who are going to give us questions. What I'm very interested in this our conversation, and I would like our speakers to put stress on it, are the obstacles which girls, women face during their civic and political participation, despite the fact that we had Velvet Revolution 2 years ago, and women's role was really important during that time. However, we still have some problems, and I would like our speakers to speak about it, and also maybe to speak about what we can do in order to face these challenges, starting from education, formal education, and civic education as well. So I'm very interested in this conversation and hope we will have a good one.
Thank you, David. Could I ask Gauarik to begin, because this is Armenia and this is the revolution which you participated in. So we give you the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Jill and David. So if I would start introducing myself, I would say that, as you told, I have an MA from Human Rights and Democratization, but it's a formal thing. And I would say that I have also an experience of 5 years working in the non-formal education as a human rights trainer and also active citizenship trainer in the topics of human rights and active citizenship. And actually my aim when I was going to this program was to combine formal and non-formal education with the methods of non-formal education and with the topics of formal education, to come up with human rights education that will be more attractive for students and more easily understood among the students of high school and also middle school. And this was the aim, to go to study human rights and democratization. Besides that, from 2013, I started to actively participate. When I was 18, I started to actively participate in political, civil, social, cultural life of Armenia. And the movements that were there on place, I was participating in every movement that you can imagine or you can read about. Of course, I was just participating. I wouldn't call myself as an organizer or whatever. But I would be honest to say that I motivated some people to also go and participate, or I empowered some people. I trained students to go and actively participate in the life of the state and become active citizens. So the aim of mine is to have, and the goal of my mine is to have young people who are not only active, but who also know their rights and responsibilities. And with the rights, I also mean the responsibilities that they have, because it's a huge problem in Armenia. Whenever I talk with students about their rights, I also need to mention that underneath the rights, there are several responsibilities, because they sometimes only call and they only name rights, but they do not understand what is the responsibility. So this was the, let's say, forcing thing or moving thing for me to start to talk about human rights. And I would say that currently I work with the rural areas of Armenia, with young people and also teachers of rural areas, because there is a huge drawback. If in the cities, it's the situation is more more developing. In the rural areas, we have a huge gap of development and also support. And yes, I do non-formal educational sessions, both for teachers and for young people, explaining again the rights, the generations of rights, and also covering the civic education, which should be implemented and taught at schools. I think that's it about myself. I'm not sure if I should talk about the problems now, or I should pass the floor to Sonia, and then we'll go with the first round of the questions. Just let me know what I should do.
Yeah, good. Why don't we have Sonia just make an
Yes.
opening introduction? Sonia.
Hello, everyone, friends. I'm very happy that we could find, all of us, the time to be together. We believe that togetherness in this moment is one of the most important things. And I also would like to say to the all women, Happy Kasturba Jayanti, as Gilles was reminding about our example of Kasturba as a woman leader. And I would like to remember the all women who are suffering discrimination in this planet. And especially as I'm living in Latin America, and what I have learned from the indigenous women of Latin America, they say they are 3 times discriminated because they are women, because they are poor, and because they are indigenous. So in this day, it was asked to me to participate in this panel. I'm very also thankful to Restart, to David, the whole group of young people so dedicated to the cause of peace and community building, and to the Jai Jagat, that I consider a family, that I had the honor to also to participate with them just for a few days in the march, but has been something that it will stay forever in my life, and that I hope to repeat again in the march and today through these sessions that are nourishing my spirit, and I'm sure the spirit of everyone, and preparing all of us to face this time of the coronavirus in the spirit of service. I also introduce briefly myself. I'm originally Italian, but I consider my mother India, because I could, after many years as an artist in Italy, looking for a path of truth, where I was feeling that art had to be useful to the people in the social, and I was feeling a little frustrated. Maybe I was not able to overcome my limits. So thanks to India, I went to India in the 1999, and I consider that I'm trained in India by the Indian people, by all religions of India, and by the Gandhian people. So I belong to the university founded by Mahatma Gandhi in 1920. It is called Gujarat Vidyapith. It has been originally, historically, the place for the training of the freedom fighters. And Gandhiji was saying that also after the independence of India, the freedom of the people should go ahead through the work, through what he was calling the constructive work, that maybe we will speak later on that, the guide of action for the independence of the people. So this is what I have adopted in my life, and I'm trying through the constructive program of Mahatma Gandhi to serve through art, through creativity. I have discovered that creativity and art, if they are shared, are beautiful. So we work in a collective art, in a pop art with the people for the social transformation. And from India to Mexico, in the vision of a mandala of the world. So this can look a little strange, but My interest when I went to India was to study and to research on the mandala concept. The mandala is in Sanskrit is circle. So if we visualize the word as a circle of peace and harmony, then we can also put at the disposal of the social rebuilding our hands, heart, and head, as Gandhiji was saying, for reharmonizing. So we have the power of creation. As women, maybe we can understand it naturally, but the power of creation is in all of us. So in the vision of a world mandala, all of us can serve this peace building and collective peace building. So from India, we have thought who is at the other side, who are our first allies, the Mexican people, because India and Mexico are at the opposites of the world. So our motto is that if we can do it through the opposites, then we can do it everywhere. So it is a kind of social mandala where the opposites are working together. So we are looking for the complementarity of the opposites. And our main teacher and our mother is the earth. So India and Mexico, Gandhiji and the indigenous people join hands with the ancient knowledge and remembering the teachings of Mother Earth.
Thank you very much. And it gets us to remember, Sonia, how important it is to look for alternatives in this post-coronavirus period. But can I now ask our dear Gorana Vic to cite some of the problems that she's dealing with?
Quarik,
Yes.
I just want to add some questions so you can use them during your speech. I underlined some important parts, and I want to mention one important phenomenon. Just 2 or 3 years, 2 or 3 days ago, in Facebook, I met a verse made by an Armenian artist. He wanted to devote it verse to Armenian women. And unfortunately, during that verse, he was comparing Armenian women with a book. And for me personally, it was not very good verse. But however, a lot of women liked it. But even there were parts which, for me, were like very even violent when you mentioned such things. So I want Quarik to speak not only about like the obstacles which girl and women face during their political and civil life, because me and Quarik faced them together. We were together in many initiatives during the revolution. Here I underlined that we were caught by police together, we were at police station together. I was remembering today this these events. So maybe I would like also to ask you to speak about Armenian like films, songs, because in our daily routine we have films which people watch on TV, but unintentionally we have a lot of context which is very discriminative in its sense. So what can we do to combat this? And also, of course, universities, which maybe is the most vulnerable part of me and Quarik. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you, David. Actually, to start with the last question about films and songs and the whole culture that exists in Armenia, I would say, and I always say about this, education is key to overcome all these obstacles, all this discrimination. And today, when I was preparing for the speech and going through the problems and issues that I have faced, and also I saw in the researches, I would say that the discrimination, unfortunately, is everywhere. And the tradition, the cultural tradition that Armenia has, and also the history that we have, is not appropriately actually used. And sometimes we face propaganda, and also in the textbooks that are there on history, and I don't know, civic education, these are also very discriminative. And the main problem that I saw today is the division and yes, division of the roles of men and women, what is unacceptable for me and people in US or in UK, where like in the UK we're fighting for these roles and the rights at the end of 19th century or 20th century. And actually I had another quote from my favorite suffragette about the women. So Susan B. Anthony, who was also an educational reformer, said about women, forget conventionalism, forget what the world thinks of you, stepping out from your place. Think your best thoughts, speak your best words, work your best works, looking only to your own conscience for approval. So today, unfortunately, in Armenia, and I know that in different developing or non-developed states, women are looking for approval from men or from society. And when I started from observing for my life and then the others, I highlighted for myself that 3 factors were empowering me to become an education specialist or become an active citizen without being afraid of both being woman and an activist. So the environment of my family, because I am a granddaughter of an activist woman and also a daughter of strong and independent woman. The second thing was education. My teachers were treating me and girls and boys at classes, during the classes equally, giving us the same opportunities. And it was fortunate. I was lucky enough to have teachers like that, because like I know that there are teachers who do not treat equally boys and girls. And sometimes the expectations from girls are higher than the expectations from boys. And if you do not meet the expectations, then there is a huge discrimination, and this causes to underestimation, undervaluing yourself. So we have this problem. I would start from self. So girls in Armenian society or women are undervaluing them, and then it goes to like being undervalued from the society and waiting for approval from everyone. Starts from family, then going to society. And I remember when David mentioned about the police station that we were taken together, I remember several statements that were done throughout me being an activist. So, aren't you shy to be a girl and be in the streets? And the policewoman told us, like, I wouldn't like to have a girl like you who is fighting in the streets. And then there was like, you do not have mother that would not allow you not to go out and fight for something. And also I don't know, but there were so many things that I faced. And when I was thinking about the participation in the movements, I saw that women were quite active. I didn't see any research actually, but what I saw in my life, women were quite active, but they were not in a leading positions. So these are the main maybe drawbacks and issues that I saw. They were not leaders. They were there, maybe in the background. I call them background players, and I called so many times me as a background player. But yes, sometimes we also were a subject of protection. So this was also something that we were facing, and we were not counted as strong as men. And I think that's it. I will maybe pass the floor to Sonia, because I can talk a lot about these issues, and I do not want to take too much time.
Thank you very, very much. Sonia, do you want to step in here?
Yeah, thank you, Goharika, for telling us, sharing with us, I mean, the people who are learning about the Armenian nonviolent, the Velvet Revolution. These are very important moments that you are sharing, because also as a woman, I can imagine the all things that you had to face for participating. But I tell you that from our side, in what we see from this revolution, in these days, I was just sharing with the friends, we were preparing a video that is dedicated basically to the Armenian Revolution, and we will send you soon. So we were sharing about the Armenian Revolution, and what we were saying is that, you know, we know about governments established on the basis of brute force. We know about electoral fraud. This happened several times in Mexico. We know about governments established on the basis of dynasties, so this kind of criteria. So to know about a people movement that is getting basically the establishment of its own government through nonviolence, then, as Gandhiji was saying, the means and the ends, they have to be the same. So it is wonderful, because now what you are saying about the role of the women, it is the time to go ahead with this construction in the country. If you are all aware about this, that the women didn't get a first line step, then maybe now through education, it is the time to do it. And it is exactly what in our small way we are also trying to do it. We believe in action, we say. So the education through the action, and we believe that the action has to be decentralized, so not only in terms of power, but also in terms of territories. So what we are facing here in this side of the planet we call Mexico is basically to their enchantment for the earth, to try together to understand the importance of the earth, and then through the indigenous people, the defense of the territory. In Mexico, almost 25% of the territory has been concessionated to the mining companies. So if we talk about autonomy, and we talk about lands, and we talk about the love for Mother Earth, we should think about the priorities. So our problems, what we are facing, I mean, there are many problems that we are facing, because maybe you will know that from when former President Calderon declared the war to the narco, it is going on a Mexican war on drugs. And this Mexican war on drugs has created 300,000 people who have been killed, and 61,000 people have disappeared in the country. So there is a structural violence that is not easy to be removed, because we have to work at many levels. So we have to join hands, spiritual people becoming activist people becoming spiritual, all kind of people, as Gandhiji was showing us, the Sarvodaya dimension, the upliftment of all, can happen only if the all dimensions of the reality work together for peace through justice. So in our movement, as a woman and as women in the education, we are basically training each other to not to be afraid to go in the places, in the villages. Sometimes maybe we have to enter in a place where there are only men and where there is a prejudgment, but we should not be afraid to enter and say, hey, we are working together for this, let's do it together. Let's do it together, because we need you. So this complementarities of the opposites is basically the service that we can do. Maybe this is a solution, but this is what we are trying to experiment. So through creative ahimsa, through creative non-violence, we should try, first of all, to work together for conscientizing the people. And in this time, in this coronavirus era, as we call it, it is the right time. Not all people can be online as we are with a computer in a comfortable way at home. So many people, they have to face the reality for getting food every day. So in this conscientization, even in this time and in the spirit of service, we should try maybe to organize, that's what we are trying here in our education movement to do, to organize and in peace brigades, you can work from home. Maybe you can cook more food and you can distribute the food to the people who cannot, who have to go out otherwise for getting the food. You can remember if you're in your neighborhood, there are elders who needs maybe your help. So there are many ways to do it also in this moment. But this moment should serve especially to understand that we are in a turning point. So this turning point is a chance to visualize together a Savodaya dimension where the all necessary actions that we will take from now till the moment that we can be together also in our community unity building, then maybe we can be clearer now, because we have to learn from the school of the earth. So this is basically our reflection in this time. We are aware that maybe capitalism will become even more aggressive. Many people, they say that. But we also know that this system, as it was, it will be never like before. And the teaching now for many people, the consciousness of many people is changing. So through conscientization, we can go into the unity. So to unite our movement, our dimensions in their difference, and through the unity to organize as one word, and like that to struggle for the real needs and not for the imposed needs. Now we are in another stage, so the turning point should serve to this. So for us, what you are doing in Armenia, how you are serving the example of the revolution and the role now of the women in the transformation of the country, I think is taking a very, very relevant meaning. So maybe we should unite more effort, even if we are distant, but we can be together in this building. And I really wish to learn more from you.
Wow. Basically, I want to thank our dear Sonia for really putting forward a very Gandhian, holistic perspective on possibilities that are real and not just idealistic. But let me come in and say two things to bring you back into the conversation, Goharek, which is basically in Armenia today, you're talking about a revolution that is incomplete. And I think when you achieve power in politics, that doesn't mean you have got a nonviolent state or people have become nonviolent, right? And there's a long process of helping people to understand how to take this nonviolent revolution forward in a way that is going to help power sharing and not creating the same old power structures. But what is very interesting about what Sonia said, if I can link one or two of the currents of what she said, is education through action. What I still wonder is to what extent we need to work with youth in rural and outside of Yerevan, basically, in rural, semi-rural areas, to get them to see their local issues and how they can work to bring a different set of attitudes and habits to people in those rural, and how can they use non-formal training to do that. So I was wondering if we could focus on that. David, do you have anything else? Or should we turn it over to Gohanek?
I think you are speaking about very essential topic, Jill, and I think Gohanek can come forward with her experience, because during participating and involvement in civic education, I know that important stress was also put on engagement of girls, women, starting from school years, university years, and I want to speak, we'll go more deep into this topic, but I also want to emphasize one important topic, which today I spoke to you, Jill. It's about these coronavirus connected problems that women face now, that as many women stay at home, according to some reports, I read an article on Washington Post or in Guardian, I'm not very sure, but the rate of domestic violence raise, and also Chinese people provided some information on this topic, and I would like also our speakers maybe to speak about this, because when we are speaking about this activism, when we are speaking about women engagement and involvement, I think it's very like when we compare it sometimes with the problems that we have, we understand that we are speaking about very high values, but we have even very simple and ordinary values which are violated strictly. And when Jill, you spoke about this non-violence after the revolution, and it's very important to speak because unfortunately we have still violence, and not only physical but also verbal. And on media, a lot of women currently face such kind of verbal violence, and it's also important to know if the police and the responsible bodies have the appropriate competence to work on this field. And I'm not even speak about psychological help that sometimes girls and women need, and even I know cases when only church can help them, but sometimes even church is doing things which is like, and I don't want to speak now about it, but I think you know what I mean. So these are like, I bring very big topics, but I'm thinking about this. That's why for me it's important to share with you and also to listen to your opinion.
Thank you, Jill and David. So yeah, if I would start with education again and go to the questions that Jill raised, and also the questions that David raised, and I combine the solution that I see is the case of not giving only information at school, but also giving a space to students, an equal space to students to experience the whole thing that they are learning. So learning is not about getting and gaining lots of knowledge, information, because information is currently free. We do not need to learn it from textbooks. We can easily learn it like in the Wikipedia, Encyclopedia of Britannica, and so on and so forth. There are lots of resources. Schools should be the institutions and the small models of society where all, like both girls, boys, teachers, and principals or the staff should experience their rights, their responsibilities, and become citizens. And if students do so, then we can be sure that they are going to be responsive towards domestic violence. They are going to be responsive towards any type of violence. And like the media that is giving the violent messages, and it's really, I should agree with David that a lot of like lots of media and messages are going about violent actions, violence, and also about women who are talking on the topics of human rights. And I have mentioned, like I have a small note in my notebook currently, and I wanted to say that actually the topics of human rights and issues of human rights in both the public institutional and civic institutions, I'm sorry for this that I'm saying, but girls and women are raising the issues of human rights. If you go through the I don't know, the speeches of members of parliament, you'll see that these are the women, and I can also call the names and say the names that are raising the problems of human rights, women's rights, children's rights, and so on and so forth, and also highlighting the importance of education. And yes, if I go to the grassroots, let's say, I would say, and foundations, I would say that every child should experience equality, firstly at home, then in the kindergartens, then at schools, and then it will go to the society, because then after like 18 they become a member of society. But in regard to domestic violence, I have read the same article, and it's worrisome for me that women still are facing this violence. But you know, I would call I would say that police is not competent enough to address the issue, unfortunately. And recently I was talking with my friend who said that in Armenian police stations, until like winter, there were no, in regards to children's rights issues, there were no psychologists who could work with children. So can you imagine? And domestic violence means also violence towards children, and so on and so forth. So this is a huge issue. And when like I know cases that when women apply for police help, or they consider police as a support, they say them go and find solutions at home because it's your family. And this is this traditional values. So as David told, yes, we are talking about higher values, we're talking about universal values, but we need to bring them into our experience and everyday life. Otherwise they are going to become, like, as human rights in Armenia, they are going to become something that is higher than us, that are far away from us, and that are like they are not in our culture, and we are going to deny them. And the key here again is education. We need to put all these values we've experienced in our education. And yes, we need also to educate our police not to have, I mean, we experience the police and we know how they treat like activists. And I mean, yes, we need to put also education trainings for police, but I don't know how we're going to overcome this if police is not, or teachers, they are not the bearers of human rights, dignity, respect, democratic values. This is the main like obstacle and gap for me that we are facing every day. We do not have enough people who bear democratic values, and traditions sometimes and stereotypes become the issue here. So yeah, I will finalize here to give the space to Sonia to talk about this.
Just before Sonia comes back, what I think is so interesting is that when there's violence, as there is in Mexico, which I appreciate Sonia is facing on a daily basis with the narco violence and the deep violence that is embedded in indigenous violence and so on. That violence in Armenia has something to do also, the violence against women has something to do with being in a conflict, in a military conflict. You know, what you can trace through any conflicts around the world is that women are suffering violence when there's conflict in the society. Yeah, when there's war, when there's civil war, and so on. So I want to raise this very important issue that Sonia has raised, which is, dealing with that conflict as she has within her organization, within the work that she's doing in Mexico. Sonia.
Yes, I think we are all facing the same in different contexts with different identities, maybe, and cultures and territories. But substantially, what we see that is maybe not easy to understand when maybe police is attacking you or raping us as women and all these things, is that separation is basically what is creating this space where the darkness can permeate and develop this structural violence. So Gandhiji was saying that if somebody is opposing you, conquest him with love. So sometimes, to say this in certain circumstances where the groups are very, very angry because of the authorities' response or attacks is not easy, but if we really want peace, we have to do it through peace. So if we want a nonviolent society, we have to do it through nonviolence. And we have to insist on that truth. So nonviolence itself is becoming a satyagraha, is becoming the insistence on truth, where education is basically to involve the brothers and the sisters from the police or from our opponents or from the mining companies sent in the lands of the indigenous people and abusing the people and expropriating the people. So it is slow, as always we say with Gilles, no? Peace is a slow process. And here we have many, many examples of slow processes, but very, very substantial for trying to create oneness. So oneness is also not to be afraid to see your opponent as your brother or sister. It is not easy, but I think this is our educational basically duty. What we have to do more and more is to try, first of all, to internalize it, to feel it, and then through this feeling to transmit it to our people. And what we have seen in Mexico, this feeling, the people who are really, for us, the masters in transmitting this understanding are the indigenous people, and especially the indigenous women. So that is why we always understand between the Gandhian movement and the indigenous people, because even in the most difficult moments of emergency or some attack that maybe we can have from our opponents, they are the people who know without fear how to express through starting from the thinking, through the words, and then into the action, the way of reconciling or the way to opening a participatory dialogue. And through this participatory dialogue, eventually a consensus at unanimity that will also involve our opponents. Why not? So I think it is an issue of training ourselves and trying to overcome our limitations. But yes, it is possible. I could experience this many, many times. And I think that this way of sharing in the schools, in the families, it should be always participative with the same criteria. I mean, we should learn how to unlearn what they have told us that it should be. And we should understand that maybe if we are in a class with the children, we can be with the parents, we can be with the teachers, and all together we can really learn how to face a transformational movement, how to do it together. That is my perception.
Any response at this point?
Yeah, actually, I would like to continue or to give some points that Sonia mentioned, and I would like to continue. So yes, I also think about connecting people, and in Armenia, especially connecting communities, because there are communities that like are living together, but I'm not sure that they are connected or know each other or know each other's issues. And when they share the same ground of experiencing the same issues or experiencing the same stories, so this makes people to become like more resistance towards some things, and to become more stronger together, and to build that common shared framework. And I would like to mention about a type of research that is called participatory action research. And for me, life is like a participatory action research, where there are no researchers or like no objects or subjects for research, but everyone is participating in some action, and people are the ones changing their reality. So this is the need to currently do, and after the virus is like overcame, or I hope that it's going to overcome soon, people need to revalue their realities, and also I think that revalue empathy that they have. So yeah, that was the thing.
And I would just like to add something in what Goharik was saying, that maybe it can be useful, what we are experimenting here, that we have learned from the indigenous people. We are all indigenous people. That is our statement. We are all indigenous people, because the people who believe in the earth and in the culture and in the regeneration of our own culture, we are indigenous people. So what we use as an instrument for this community to connect the communities, as you were saying, is the assembly. So what we do is we try to organize assemblies where we invite our neighbors, where we invite these communities that are maybe, you know, our neighbors, but we don't know about them. We really don't know. So to create an assembly together, to express together which are the points of the assembly, which are the problems that we are facing daily, as you were mentioning, which are the problems that we are facing, localizing also the problems and uniting the efforts among neighbors. So in this way, the agreements that will emerge from this assembly, from this sharing of the problems, will be education. So we will start working together for some concrete, maybe little points that are very, very significant for that community. So if we visualize this methodology as circles that can be expanded, then we can multiply our efforts till we visualize the whole world like that. So we have just to organize each other. So there is nothing to fear, and there is always the chance to do it. And maybe now it is really the right moment, because we can use this time for common reflection and starting organize something when it will be possible to meet. And also the power of gazing, now looking each other in the eyes, is still very much important to us.
What is interesting is how you're talking, Sonia, about organizing and building groups. And I think education is important, but it's a tool that is used by groups to empower themselves. And so the education is not the central point. The organizing of people is very central in changing the way people deal with power, and therefore can live differently, and therefore have an influence on larger structures, which I think is Sonia's point. So what would be really, really interesting is to hear how Restart and your initiative as a non-formal educator, the initiatives you're taking to organize groups in different parts of Armenia to take responsibility to decenter power and to share it and to learn to act differently in this new Armenia.
Yes. Should I? Yeah, okay. So yes, I think that as I mentioned about participatory action research, and as Sonia mentioned about life being a circle, and participatory action research is also about circling, like starting to plan, then to implement, and this is the movement, and let's say this is a method that is done by the communities. So there are no hierarchy of researchers or whomever, authorities or whomever. So people are defining their problems, they are finding the solutions, so they are self-organized, then they are preparing the steps to change like the whole policy, and then the most important thing, they self-reflect. And what I do currently is connected with students, as I told, and we are trying, like I also cooperated with Restart, and last time when I was giving some small session for them on again active citizenship, after that I saw the results with student councils that were self-organized again, and that were doing some doing some changes, that were finding their problems and then addressing the problems in both, like in all the levels, schools, then it goes to local authorities, then it goes to a bigger thing like the regional authorities, then it can go up to, for example, the Ministry of Education Science. So this is a huge movement that I started actually in Vajot to inspire students, to educate them, to give them motivation for self-organizing student councils at schools, and then bring it into maybe regional level and have a huge student council movement. So yes, from Vajot region now I have some results, and like girls are sharing with me that in Nador, Mars, and also in Gyumri there are some student councils that are self-organized, and also I'm always there to answer to their questions, but not the main ideology here is not to impose my ideas, not to give them solutions, but bring them to the solution, asking the right questions. This is the ideology that I follow, and I mean this is a huge impact that an individual can have in personal or in community level. So student councils are one example of communities that are currently self-organized.
Wow, thank you so much for that, those examples. David, do you have any other examples you want to add?
I will continue what Koarik was speaking about. When we are speaking about these problems, when we are speaking about education, it comes to part what we can do ourselves. And education must bring an action, and often it brings when people study something, when they think about something, like naturally it brings something. When you are thinking about a topic differently, how it is in objective world, you collide with this and you want to change it. So it's important to change a lot of, to help to people to maybe changes in their mind, and so they will want to change the world, the community, where they live. So at this point, I would like to emphasize the importance of initiating groups, of interest groups, so they can protect their rights, they can protect their ideas, and they can advocate them, and even to struggle for them, because every topic which we are thinking about must be struggled, must be negotiated. And if, for example, students are speaking about student issues, workers are speaking about labor rights, these are things which are have not been under the attention maybe of politicians, or maybe they're well under attention, but there were not enough solutions for them. So from our part, we can work on civil society to empower more groups, to have more people interested in these topics. And what I was, for example, what I was thinking about when we were speaking about this interest group, and I'm also always think about university. For example, I think it will be awesome, for example, if girls can unite and have their own student council at university. It's very possible. Unfortunately, we are used to having only one. That's why a lot of interest, a lot of voices are not covered. So if there was an opportunity to have more than one, I think it will be very realistic if the girls assembled, and because they have their agenda, they have their issues, and it's not like making boundaries or separation, but sometimes you need to come together and to do what you can do. And maybe boys can come and join. It's very possible. I think they will.